The low thrum of indie rock filled our apartment, a sound I usually associated with comfort and lazy Saturday nights. Tonight, it felt like a funeral dirge. The party was winding down. Only the core group remained, me, my girlfriend Chloe, my best friend Mark, his girlfriend Sarah, and a few others lounging on our oversized sectional sofa. Our sofa. The one I'd spent 3 weekends assembling. The air was thick with something other than the scent of spilled beer and pizza. It was tension. I'd felt it for weeks, a subtle dissonance in the harmony of our life together. Chloe had been distant, her phone always face down, her smiles not quite reaching her eyes. I tried to talk to her, but my attempts were brushed aside as me being too needy or in my head. Tonight, the dam broke. It started with a stupid argument about a movie. I'd made a casual comment, and Mark had countered with a surprisingly sharp jab. "Oh, leave it to Alex to overthink the fun out of everything." I frowned. "It was just an opinion, man." "Yeah, well, some opinions are better than others," he shot back, and I saw Chloe nod in agreement from the corner of my eye. It was a small thing, but it felt like a betrayal. Mark was supposed to be my guy, my brother since college. Chloe stood up, her wine glass held delicately in her hand. She had a way of commanding a room without raising her voice. "Actually," she said, her voice cutting through the music, "Mark has a point." All eyes went to her. I felt a cold dread pool in my stomach. This was it. The dissonance was about to become a crashing, deafening chord. "Alex," she said, her tone syrupy sweet but laced with venom. "We need to talk. And I think it's best we do it right here, with our friends, so there are no misunderstandings." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Chloe, what is this?" She took a slow sip of her wine, her eyes locking onto mine over the rim of the glass. "I slept with someone else." The words hung in the air, sucking all the oxygen from the room. The indie rock suddenly sounded mocking. I stared at her, my mind a blank slate of shock. I couldn't form a thought, a question, a single syllable. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then, she delivered the killing blow. She smirked. It wasn't a small, regretful twitch of the lips. It was a full-blown, confident, cruel smirk. "I'm not even sorry, Alex. I needed a real man. Someone decisive. Someone with a backbone." The phrase "a real man" echoed in the cavern of my skull. It was designed to emasculate, to shatter me. I looked from her smug face to the man she'd cheated with, who I now realized was Derek, a guy from her gym who was all biceps and bravado. He was sitting on the arm of the sofa, looking unbearably proud of himself. The worst part wasn't Chloe's confession. It wasn't even the smirk. The worst part was what happened next. I looked to my friends for support, for a flicker of outrage on my behalf. I looked at Mark. He just shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "She's got a point, dude. You've been kind of passive lately. She needs a guy who takes charge." Sarah nodded beside him. "We all just want Chloe to be happy, Alex. You haven't been making her happy." It was a mutiny. A complete and total betrayal, not just by the woman I loved, but by the people I considered my family. They had all known. They had watched her drift away, they had probably listened to her complain about me, and they had all sided with her. They saw me as the problem. The quiet, reliable, boring Alex who paid the lion's share of the rent on this beautiful downtown apartment, who fixed their laptops, who drove them home when they were too drunk to stand. The man who wasn't real enough. Something inside me snapped. But it wasn't anger that flooded the void. It wasn't sorrow or a desire to fight. It was clarity. A cold, sharp, liberating clarity. I saw them all for what they were, parasites, propped up by a life I had quietly built for them. They didn't see me, they saw what I provided. And now, they had discarded me. I didn't shout. I didn't plead. I didn't ask why. I just smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had just been handed the key to his own cage. The confusion on their faces was immediate. They had expected tears. They had expected a scene. My quiet smile unnerved them more than any outburst could have. Slowly, deliberately, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my keys. I placed my apartment key on the coffee table. Then, I walked to the small bowl by the door where we kept our car keys. I picked up my set, the keys to my car, the one registered solely in my name. "Alex? What are you doing?" Chloe asked, her smirk finally faltering. I didn't answer. I just looked at her, at Mark, at all of them one last time. I memorized the look of burgeoning panic in their eyes. Then, I turned around, opened the door, and walked out into the hallway. The click of the lock behind me was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I didn't look back. I just walked down the hall, took the elevator down to the garage, got into my car, and left. I left my apartment, my girlfriend, my friends, and the entire hollow life I had built. I drove into the night with no destination in mind, the quiet smile still on my face. The funeral was over. This was a resurrection. The hum of the engine was a steady companion as I drove, the city lights blurring into streaks of neon and gold. I didn't have a plan, but I had a direction, a way. The initial shock had subsided, replaced by an icy calm. The smile was gone, replaced by a grim, determined set to my jaw. They thought I was weak, passive, not a real man. They had no idea who I really was. For years, I had cultivated an image of being the average Alex. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for what I had. My parents had built a tech empire from the ground up, and while I had inherited their wealth, I'd also inherited their work ethic and a deep-seated distrust of people who were only interested in money. So, I lived modestly, at least, by my standards. The downtown apartment, the nice car, the frequent dinners and vacations, to my friends, it seemed like I was just a guy with a decent job in software development who was a little too generous. They had no idea that my decent job was as the lead architect for a proprietary algorithm at my own boutique firm, a firm I'd built myself. They had no idea that the downtown apartment building they lived in? My family's corporation owned it. The generosity wasn't me being a spendthrift, it was me spending a fraction of my income to make the people I cared about comfortable. I didn't flash my wealth because I thought it was vulgar. I wanted real connection. And I had been played for a fool. Chloe's words, "I needed a real man," echoed again. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. The real man she'd chosen, Derek, was a personal trainer who probably lived with 3 roommates. The real man she discarded was the silent architect of her entire lifestyle. I pulled into the valet lane of the Sovereign, a sleek, glass-and-steel hotel that felt more like a private residence. The doorman, a kind man named George, recognized me instantly. "Mr. Alistair," he said, using my full name, the one my friends never knew. "Good to see you, sir. Will you be staying with us tonight?" "Yes, George." "Indefinitely, perhaps," I replied, handing him the keys to my car. "Please have my things sent up to the penthouse." He nodded, his professionalism unwavering. "Of course, sir." Upstairs, the penthouse was a silent sanctuary of minimalist luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, including a distant view of the very apartment building I had just left. I stood before the window, looking out at the glittering lights, and pulled out my phone. It was time to take charge. My first call was to my lawyer. "David, it's Alex Alistair. I need you to initiate eviction proceedings for apartment 7B at the Meridian Tower. The lease is in my name. The primary occupant, Chloe Vance, has violated our private agreement. Give them the standard 30-day notice. Consider it done, Alex." "Any trouble?" "Nothing I can't handle," I said, my voice cold. My second call was to my personal banker. "Michael, good evening. I need you to do a few things for me. First, cancel all supplementary credit cards linked to my primary account." "Yes, the one ending in 4028. That's Chloe Vance. Effective immediately." "Second, I need you to freeze the joint savings account. Transfer the full balance to my private account." The initial funds were all mine, you have the records. My third call was to the concierge service I used. Hi, Maria. I need to arrange for a vehicle retrieval tomorrow morning. A black Audi A7, license plate, yes, that one. It's currently in the garage of the Meridian Tower. The keys are with a Ms. Chloe Vance. She is no longer authorized to use the vehicle. Please handle it discreetly. With each call, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I was dismantling the life I had built for her, for them, brick by brick. It wasn't about revenge. It was about consequences. Chloe wanted a man who takes charge. She was about to see what that looked like. She wanted to see power. She had mistaken my quiet kindness for a lack of it. That was her fatal error. I ordered room service, took a long, hot shower, and for the first time in months, slept soundly. The bed was massive, the sheets had a thread count I couldn't even guess, and the silence was absolute. The next morning, I woke to the sun streaming through the windows. I felt rested. Reborn. I made a cup of coffee from the high-end machine in the suite's kitchen and checked my phone. It was 9:15 a.m. And it was already blowing up. 1 missed call from Chloe. 2 missed calls from Mark. A text from Sarah, "Hey, what was that about last night? You okay?" I ignored them all. I watched the city wake up below me, sipping my coffee. The first domino had just fallen. Chloe probably tried to buy a latte on her way to work and suffered the small, sharp humiliation of a declined card. Then the phone buzzed again. Chloe. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again. Mark. Ignored. Again. Chloe. Again. An unknown number. Again. Chloe. I put my phone on silent and set it on the marble countertop, screen up. For the next hour, I watched it light up with a relentless, frantic rhythm. The calls kept coming, a digital storm of panic and confusion. Chloe. Mark. Sarah. Chloe again. By the time I finished my breakfast, the screen displayed a notification that made a grim smile return to my face. 32 missed calls. They were starting to understand. Not what they had done, but what they had lost. And they had no idea it was only the beginning. The morning started with a headache and the sour taste of cheap wine. Chloe woke up on the sofa, a blanket thrown over her. The apartment felt eerily quiet and strangely large without Alex's presence. Derek had left sometime in the early hours, mumbling something about an early client. For a moment, a sliver of regret pricked at her, but she pushed it down. She'd done what she had to do. Alex was a safety net, but he wasn't exciting. He was a comfortable old sweater, and she wanted a leather jacket. Her first sign that something was wrong was at the artisanal coffee shop downstairs. "That'll be $7.50, the barista said cheerfully. Chloe tapped her card, the sleek, black card Alex had given her, the one that never failed. Declined. She frowned. Try it again. Declined. A flush of heat crept up her neck. That's impossible. It's an unlimited card. The barista just stared at her. Fumbling, she paid with the last $10 bill in her wallet and fled, her coffee tasting bitter. She tried to call Alex. No answer. She tried again. Straight to voicemail. A knot of irritation tightened in her stomach. How dare he be so childish? She got back to the apartment, intending to send him a furious text, when she saw an email notification on her laptop. The subject line made her blood run cold. Subject: Notice of Lease Termination, Apartment 7B. Her hands trembled as she opened it. It was a formal, legal document from Alastair Property Group, a name she vaguely recognized. It stated that due to a breach of the private tenancy agreement, the lease held by Mr. Alexander Alastair was being terminated. All occupants had 30 days to vacate the premises. Alastair Property Group, she whispered. She Googled the name. The first result was a multi-billion-dollar real estate development firm. At the top of the About Us page was a picture of the board of directors. And there, smiling confidently in a tailored suit, was Alex's father. Beside him, listed as Vice President of Strategic Development, was a younger, more serious-looking Alex. Alexander Alastair Jr. The room began to spin. The apartment she lived in, the building itself, it was his. She frantically called Mark. "Mark. We have a huge problem. Alex's family owns this building. He's kicking us out." "What?" "No way," Mark said, but his voice was laced with panic. He'd also woken up to a series of declined transactions when trying to buy a new video game online with the card Alex had linked to his account for group expenses. The dominoes began to fall faster. The high-speed internet suddenly cut out. The password for their shared streaming services was changed. An email arrived from a discreet concierge service informing her that an Audi A7, registered to Mr. Alastair, would be professionally retrieved from the garage within the hour. Panic morphed into pure terror. This wasn't a childish tantrum. This was a systematic demolition. Alex wasn't just leaving, he was erasing them. Chloe, Mark, and Sarah gathered in the living room, the silence now deafening without the hum of the Wi-Fi router or the glow of the 70-inch TV. The luxurious apartment suddenly felt like a prison counting down to eviction day. "What do we do?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "My portion of the rent. I can't afford anything like this on my own." "We have to find him," Chloe said, her voice hard. The arrogance from the night before had evaporated, replaced by a desperate, raw fear. She had traded a king for a court jester, and now the castle walls were crumbling around her. Derek wasn't answering his phone either. She suspected he knew the gravy train had derailed. They began calling Alex relentlessly. Every call went to voicemail. Every text went unread. They called his work number, the one he'd given them for his software job, and got a polite but firm secretary who stated, "Mr. Alastair is unavailable." The 32 missed calls weren't just from Chloe. They were from all of them. A barrage of escalating emotions. Voicemail 1, "Chloe, angry Alex, pick up the phone. This isn't funny. My card was declined. Call me now." Voicemail 5, "Mark, confused dude, what's going on? Sarah said you're kicking us out? Is this some kind of joke?" Voicemail 12, "Chloe, pleading Alex, okay, I'm sorry. I was drunk, I was stupid. Please, just call me back. We need to talk about this." Voicemail 20, "Mark, desperate man, please. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that stuff. We were wrong. Just, don't do this, okay? My whole life is tied up in this place." Voicemail 32, "Chloe, sobbing Alex, please. I made a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. I didn't know, please just talk to me. I need you." The power dynamic had not just shifted, it had inverted with crushing force. The real man she had mocked held all the cards. He had built their world, and with a few quiet phone calls, he had torn it all down. They weren't just losing an apartment or a friend, they were losing a lifestyle they had taken for granted, a foundation they never even realized was there. They were in freefall, and the man who had cut the cord wasn't even answering his phone. For 2 days, they lived in a state of suspended animation, trapped in a luxury box whose gilded fixtures now mocked them. They finally got a lead on Alex's location through a mutual acquaintance who didn't know the details of the drama, but mentioned seeing Alex heading into the Sovereign Hotel. Desperate, Chloe, Mark, and Sarah went to the hotel. They looked out of place in the opulent lobby, their casual clothes and stressed faces contrasting sharply with the quiet elegance around them. Chloe, summoning the last of her audacity, approached the front desk. "I'm here to see Alexander Alastair," she said. The concierge gave her a polite but impenetrable smile. "I'm sorry, but we don't have a guest registered under that name." "Of course. He would use his real name. The one from the website." "Try Alex Alastair," Mark whispered from behind her. The concierge's expression didn't change. I cannot confirm or deny the presence of any guest, ma'am. It's our policy. Defeated, they retreated to the lobby lounge, ordering coffees they could barely afford. Their plan was to wait, to hope they could catch him coming or going. After an hour that felt like an eternity, they saw him. He stepped out of a private elevator, not in the jeans and hoodie they were used to, but in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. He looked taller, more formidable. He was in conversation with an older, distinguished man, and he moved with an easy confidence they had never seen before. He wasn't the passive, quiet Alex. This was Alexander Alistair Jr., the architect of empires. Chloe's breath caught in her throat. She stood up, and he saw them. For a brief moment, his expression was unreadable. He said something quietly to the man he was with, who nodded and walked toward the exit. Then, Alex turned his full attention to them. He walked over, not with anger, but with the weary patience of a CEO dealing with a minor departmental issue. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice calm and even. "Alex, we need to talk," Chloe began, her voice shaking. She tried to muster a tearful, apologetic look. "I made a terrible mistake. I was confused, and I was cruel, and I'm so sorry. What I said. I didn't mean it." "Which part didn't you mean, Chloe?" he asked, his gaze unwavering. "The part where you cheated on me, or the part where you said you needed a real man in front of all our friends?" Mark stepped forward, trying the buddy approach. "Come on, man. Don't do this. We messed up. We were idiots. But kicking us out? Cutting everything off? It's too much." Alex looked at Mark, and for the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed his face, disappointment. "Too much? I gave you my friendship, Mark. My trust. And you sided with her. You validated her cruelty. You stood in my home, a home I paid for, and you agreed that I wasn't man enough. Did you ever once think about where all of this came from? The trips, the dinners, the rent you barely contributed to? Did you think it just materialized out of thin air?" He turned his gaze back to Chloe, who was now openly crying. "You wanted a man who takes charge. A man with power. You were so blinded by the cheap imitation of strength you saw in Derek that you never bothered to look at the real thing standing right in front of you. My power isn't in my fists or my voice, Chloe. It's in my ability to build. And it's in my ability to dismantle." He spoke without raising his voice, yet every word landed like a physical blow. The entire lobby seemed to have gone silent around them. "This isn't a negotiation," he continued, his voice hardening slightly. "This is the consequence of your choices. You chose to betray me. You chose to humiliate me. You chose to side against me. My choice is to remove you from my life. Completely." He looked at each of them one by one. "The eviction notice is legal and binding. You have 28 days left. The car has been retrieved. The accounts are closed. There is nothing left to discuss. But what are we supposed to do?" Sarah squeaked, looking terrified. "Where are we supposed to go?" Alex gave her a look of cold pity. "That is no longer my concern. You made your allegiances clear. Now you can rely on each other." With that, he gave a slight nod, as if concluding a business meeting. He turned and walked away, his posture straight, his steps measured. He didn't look back. They stood there, broken and exposed in the lavish hotel lobby. They hadn't just been dumped, they had been audited, found to be a liability, and written off. Chloe finally understood. The smile he'd given her that night wasn't weakness. It was the calm, quiet smile of a king who, upon discovering treason in his court, had simply decided to burn the castle down and build a new one elsewhere. And they were nothing more than ashes. The crisp autumn air felt clean and new. Alex stood on the balcony of his penthouse, a cup of coffee warming his hands. The city sprawled below him, a map of his past and a blueprint for his future. He no longer looked at the distant Meridian Tower with any emotion. It was just another property in his family's portfolio, a line item on a spreadsheet. The past month had been a period of radical reconstruction. He'd thrown himself into his work at Alistair Corp, not as a hideaway, but with a renewed sense of purpose. The quiet Alex who coded in the background was gone. In his place was Alexander Alistair, who now led board meetings, who challenged old ideas with innovative new ones, and who commanded respect not because of his name, but because of his sharp intellect and clear vision. He was finally integrating the two halves of himself. His phone buzzed. It was a text from his sister, who he had reconnected with since the breakup. "Dinner tonight? Dad's making his terrible spaghetti, but I'll bring good wine. 7 p.m. He smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "On my way." He was rebuilding his real foundation, family, genuine connection, people who knew all of him and loved him anyway. He'd heard whispers about his old life. Mark had been forced to move back in with his parents, his pride shattered. His relationship with Sarah had crumbled under the financial strain. The group, once so tightly knit by the social glue of Alex's resources, had scattered to the wind, realizing their friendship was as hollow as their bank accounts. And Chloe, he'd seen her once, by chance. He was leaving a business lunch when he saw her across the street, arguing with Derek. The swagger was gone from Derek's posture, he looked annoyed and defensive. Chloe looked tired. Her clothes were less polished, her hair less perfect. Their eyes met for a fleeting second across the busy street. In her gaze, he saw a universe of regret, loss, and a desperate longing for what she had so carelessly thrown away. He felt nothing. Not pity, not anger, not satisfaction. Just a profound and utter indifference. He turned and got into the town car that was waiting for him, leaving her behind for the final time. Later that evening, after a loud, chaotic, and wonderful dinner with his family, he checked his phone one last time before bed. There was one final message, sent from a number he didn't have saved, but knew instantly. It was from Chloe. "I know you'll never forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I see it now. You were the realest man I ever knew. I was just too stupid and shallow to realize it. I hope you're happy." He read the message. He acknowledged the flicker of closure it offered. For a moment, he considered typing a reply. But what was there to say? He had already given his answer a month ago, with his silence, with his smile, with the decisive click of a closing door. His real response wasn't in words. It was in the life he was now building. A life based on self-respect, not on the approval of others. A life where his kindness was a gift, not an obligation. He had learned a brutal lesson: some people will see your quiet strength as weakness until you're forced to show them your power. He deleted the message without a reply. He put his phone down, walked back to the window, and looked out at the endless city lights. He didn't need her validation anymore. He had finally learned to validate himself. The man she wanted, the man he had become, no longer had any room for her in his blueprint. And for the first time in a very long time, he felt completely, and unshakably, free.